look at some of the DeFi protocols and things that we were discussing in the salon today, and just to understand, between Little Sphere, Metis, and some of the other companies, clearly Quest building, large portion of this as well. When you build a protocol, what do you think is really important? Like, what are the first components of these decentralized applications that need to be up and running? What sort of phase two? What's breakthrough that no one's ever done before? Can you guys help me kind of orient me like into a system that's a little more organized? Would you like to answer that, Leo or Jay?
Sure, I can go first. Um, so so prior to building Lithosphere, we looked at all the problems. Well, I looked at most of the problems. Uh, you know, the issues in the current, blockchain networks. Ethereum, most people, uh, complain uh, about gas fees, and although Ethereum, inspired everything, it was clear that they didn't get a few things right, and there was a big opportunity there. And then of course interoperability. It's like the main uh, problem, because there's a lot of DeFi services and products out there, but if they can't communicate, or they can't transact with each other, then DeFi will only go so far. So I would say interoperability is the main problem to solve. And then from that, of course, you look at transaction fees, speed, and security. So that's what we looked at Kaj Labs.
So in terms of inter-blockchain communication, is your platform one like Polkadot or Cosmos, where you can create parachains that are interoperable, or are you offering interoperability across existing, not currently compatible chains? Like, for example, could you bridge Bitcoin to Ethereum or to Polkadot? That was for Jay.
Yeah, all right. So in our platform, we actually think Polkadot, in our opinion, we think Polkadot, Cosmos, Definities, like, yeah, ICP. These platforms are more about compatibility, and very much less about interoperability. Um, because on Polkadot you have to create a parachain, and then Cosmos you have to kind of join their hub to achieve interoperability, and that forces uh, you know anyone that wants to interact with Cosmos hub to adhere to whatever Cosmos has implemented. Lithosphere, we're pretty much the way we are approaching interoperability. Um, we're creating, we're mapping assets and uh, locking them. So when someone is let's say you're transferring BTC, you're swapping BTC for Ethereum. Uh, the BTC is locked in using through our myriad distributed key management (MDKM). BTC is locked in, and virtual BTC is created, and in its exchange for Ethereum. In the same way, it's you know like um, there's a lockout mechanism, and that's the key. That's our main way of how we're bridging assets, uh, rather than having them join a hub or create power chain. to achieve that cross-chain functionality. So we don't want to impose any standards, or we want all blockchains to keep their sovereignty while interacting with lithosphere.
I'm particularly interested in the problem of decentralizing secrets, which sort of more or less obviates to or evaluates to a decentralized management system. But I don't want to monopolize the conversation today. Perhaps you and I could connect offline, because I'd like to understand better whether you decentralization of secret solution.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'm available to chat after this call.
Okay, I'll get Mariana to connect.
Yeah, happy to do it. Let's, Leah, do you have anything you want to add to that sort of hierarchy of problems?
Yes. Well, keeping in mind that at Metis we are focusing on the Ethereum blockchain, what I can tell you is that we are providing the structure for any DEX to deploy on our layer 2. Right now we have a Metis swap, which is a test net swapping application where you can create your own coins and exchange it with other people. And everybody is invited to try it. It's really fun. It is a test net. You cannot swap with real value, but it shows you how efficient the infrastructure can be. And also we find that decentralization is the main issue here, and we have a very robust design and structure for keeping secure and decentralized the whole process. So for us, decentralization and security are the main issues here.
Yeah, and I think with something that Joel was talking about, which is the security, the key ownership, the key distribution, et cetera. That's sort of, I would say, a lifelong problem, right? In blockchain, because the blockchain is a very secure environment, but getting the key security on it is quite challenging. So as we look through these companies today, we had some really interesting structures and discussions about DAOs. And I thought Quest had some really great points about how they're structured and how they're working with some of the government structures around the world. So maybe you guys can give us a little bit more about, how you actually accomplish, working with the country of Belize and others.
Sure, I can speak to that.
Yeah.
The structures that Christian spoke of, that we talk about, are structures that all governments that respect property titles and respect property rights have put these structures in. In fact, the structures we use in the U.S. are actually stronger in third world countries. Take, for example, in Nigeria, these structures exist to such a degree that you could actually hire a private police force to enforce those property rights if you wanted. So in some ways, governments that don't have a strong hold on this population actually have the same statutory rights that they actually have stronger than what you'd get in the U.S. In the U.S., Florida, etc., is like one of the strongest in the U.S. for the property rights control that we have statutorily. So when you understand that, we go to a government and we offer a solution that is on par with their level of power, but doesn't require them to operate at the normal slow pace of government, because government is legendarily slow in implementing things. But yet we can go in and implement at the speed of business, but with the power that the government has. over property. So we got the best of both worlds, and that's why government likes us. That's particularly why Belize was excited, because we could move quickly using the powers that they already have set up. We could move quickly and using their power solve the problem that they themselves would be bogged down in bureaucracy to solve.
Let me give you an example of that. When we visited with the Secretary of State and the Prime Minister's brother in Belize, they did not believe that we had the ability to do this. They simply said, well, you actually can't do this. And as we were sitting with Christopher Coy, I said, well, actually we can. And it's important to note that Christopher Coy is an attorney and he does have his own law firm. So I just pulled up my computer. I said, Mr. Coy, here is the statute that we can operate under, and this is what this statute means, and this is how we do the process. And he sat there and he read it and he said, okay. That's important because most government entities, and I'm going to say actually all government entities, are not going to recognize the powers of some of their statutes, and they're not going to recognize how to marry the system that we have in place. They're not going to recognize how to do this. We actually go to them and we have to show them, hey, look, this is how it's done. And then they go, okay. It's actually quite simple, but getting into them takes some work. So, but going off what Michael was saying, it's very important to understand that we have this system down. We understand the statutory regulations. We know how they work, and we know how to inject into the DNA of the property the cryptocurrency so that it can never be removed from that.
Yeah, I love the idea that you started with these real estate rights, but you end up actually getting a payment platform sort of approved by the government, and then the monetary system you set up is used to pay salaries and other things inside the country. Can you address how that happened?
It actually goes even further than that, because what we proposed to Belize, the shining object that we used was we can sell your carbon credits. We can create carbon credits where you cannot, and then we can sell them where you have been unable to. And that got us in the door. And from there, we introduced to them the fact that you can take all of your government-owned properties and you can monetize those. So you can attach a cryptocurrency dollar value to those. And then you can, in place of your own dollar or the US dollar, you can use that cryptocurrency to then pay your people. And so they're now making payroll, or they will be making payroll with Quest Crypto. And then that will trickle down. The government in return then accepts Quest Coin as payment for taxes or levies or other fees like that. So we've assisted them and shown them how to create an economy that will help them survive anything negative with the US dollar. And we can do that with other governmental systems as well.
That's fascinating.
Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, I love it. I think it's amazing. Thank you. I want to go to Chase because I haven't asked him anything yet. And Chase, the whole second discussion will be in your area of expertise. Henimoka Brands just raised another $50 million from Samsung, and they're in the business of development of blockchain games that incorporate NFTs. Which I think probably your games will definitely incorporate NFTs as well. Tell us about your raise, and then what do you see as the potential for your company, a games company that has, embraced this new way of doing business?
Yeah, it is insane. I mean, the sky's the limit, definitely, on just what these gaming companies can do. Animoca being one of those just major unicorn companies backed by so many, which, of course, we're definitely looking to those companies as inspiration and things like that, too. We're in the midst of fundraising right now for Attack Wagon Games, and we so far have finished our seed. We are backed by a few different investment firms, Reblock Digital, Red Cave Ventures, and Polygon, or originally Matic, has come alongside us just recently and finished up our seed. We are now into private round, which we're trying to raise 1.2 million with a valuation of about $10 million. But it is really what we're trying to do right now in Q3, along with raising the 1.2 million, is we're trying to bring on the best kind of advisors. Right now, we are talking with Jeffrey Zilfin from Axie. We're talking. I've actually been making contact with Yat from Animoca. We're talking with, of course, Shrey and all of the guys over at Polygon Matic to be part of our board, so that we make all the right decisions and not only make the right decisions, but have a lot of people with a lot of experience behind us, pushing us in the right directions too. So that's definitely, I think the sky is definitely the limit when it comes to NFTs in the gaming marketplace.
And some of the raises that I'm seeing, like Animoca raised almost 90 million on a $1 billion valuation about 6 weeks ago. And now I would say with Samsung, that's like 138. But you look at Dapper Labs and they raised 305 million at a 2.6 billion valuation and potentially are raising more at a 7.5 billion valuation. These are not, there has to be a new name for these. These are not just unicorns. They're like a multiple of a
Yeah,
unicorn.
They're
exactly.
like turbo unicorns, like robotic flying unicorns or something.
Yeah, it's almost amazing. Do you see do you see where that ROI is coming from, Chase, since you're so intimately in this space?
I mean, truthfully, no. they're definitely pulling a lot of stuff just out from nowhere, I feel like, but that's not necessarily a bad thing 'cause it allows for a lot of things like that. The NFT market is definitely big, but I do think a lot of the feed generation and things like that from different NFTs inside of game mechanics definitely help play a big part of that. With Sandbox having not Sandbox, Ember Sword and things like that having fees associated to land plots and those kind of associations, I think it definitely brings up the value of the game itself and also, of course, the companies. But with games, anything made by Animoca or backed by Animoca, I definitely think there's a lot more than just the NFTs that are doing it, and a whole lot more when it comes to sand and things like that are definitely bringing a lot better of a spin to the gaming market alone in comparison to the old school game markets that we're kind of dealing with today.
So maybe Jeanette or Chase, you guys know how big is the games market today globally in billions?
Trillions.
Is it?
Yes.
Is it already? Because I remember it not long ago it was only 30 billion. I can Google it, I guess. So the bottom line is though, I feel that some of these bets are not being placed just purely on games. On some of these platforms, I think people are placing bets that all of our visual markets, all of our visual media, video, audio, etc., they're all going to be restructured with some of these platforms. Do you guys think that's?
Yeah, I think part of Animoca's big valuation has to do with some of the relationships that they have with, if you talk about the Olympics and the value of a relationship with the Olympics and the Olympic pins and the NFL, those are some pretty high ticket items as far as desirability for NFTs. So I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that just plus the entire metaverse theory in general. I mean, there's definitely companies trying to push for a specific metaverse. I think Sandbox and all them and Animoca and all their different appendages are doing a really, really good job at trying to push that metaverse idea too.
Yes, I'm looking at the video game industry stats on, I Googled it, and basically on Statista, which is one of the companies that, is in the business of tracking this. And the value of the video game market in the US in 2021 is about 65.5 billion. And the consumer spending on gaming in the US in Q2 of 2020 is 11.6 billion. And the second quarter mobile games revenue in North America is 13.2 billion. So it seems to me that if somebody is investing, um, into 7.5 billion valuation, you would have to, somebody needs to mute themselves. Can
Is
you?
that me? That's my.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think if you look at the valuation of the market, um, 7.5 billion is almost like bigger than like
The
10% of
gaming
the
industry.
entire, yeah, of the industry. So it's kind of a high valuation. So I'm just wondering what is going to make up that valuation, if
Yeah, I
any.
think I think part of it too is a lot depends on what you define the gaming market as. I mean, there's the gaming market, there's video games, there's casual games, there's mobile games, there's gaming platforms, there's VR AR games. So there's a lot of different components, and I think there's a lot of different statistics sizing that market depending on where the emphasis of your growth is likely to be. So we're growing at a CAGR of, I think, 15% or more right now in that space. So yeah, I mean, it's certainly a big bet, but there's a lot of different pieces. So
If I can say so, maybe the fact of being able to get access to your users through the NFTs has to do with the idea of market penetration, because of course the gaming industry is very important, and the actual game, it's a business itself, but the possibility of airdropping your NFT holders with additional perks and creating communities and spreading the word among these communities with cross-selling might be part of the reason of all this interest and huge investments.
I do agree. I definitely think that cross selling is going to be huge. I mean, if you just look at it, there's the most popular crypto game right now is Axie Infinity, and these are people that aren't necessarily even playing a game; they're just making a living. I mean, they have thousands and thousands of users that are literally making $1,000 to $2,000 a month in the Philippines and some of those Asian countries, right in that area, and it for them it's more of a business than it is a game. So I think that's definitely another part of it. Looking at it from just a monthly income source, I think is another a very big deal.
I think that's a huge point, Chase. It's really interesting to look at the way that the NFTs really have kind of powered a revolution of optimizing the content development marketplace in many different areas of content development, and then ability to be paid for the work that's contributed. The influencer market is going to be restructured. So if you look at YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and everything else, that's going to be restructured with these new platforms. The professionally produced programming, like Netflix, Amazon, HBO Plus, etc. Those markets are going to be restructured. Um, Film and television production, and then of course gaming. And then finally, this connection that I think Leah is alluding to, which is the connection of commerce with um, film, television, and other entertainment. That hasn't happened. We've been waiting for it for years and years and years to come. And I think finally, with some of these NFT opportunities, we can actually connect the final purchase of a product with viewing of the media, or attachment to a certain kind of media. And I see that part of that valuation as well. So the question, we go through our newsletter every week in the clubhouse, as well as we focus on Q&A with the presenters in the salon. Our newsletter this week had that first article we just discussed, but also had the one with Mila Kunis's Stoner Cats cartoon, which is making millions selling NFTs. This is almost like a pre-sale of a pre-produced or half of almost produce programming. What do you think is going to happen in that space?
I think that this is something that we're going to see a lot more of coming forward. I mean, I think we suspected this was coming, but this is one of the really first big examples. And I think that a lot of shows are going to end up being funded this way. I think crowdfunding may go away, and this might really replace it.
So crowdfunding was already on the way to this model. Jeanette, I do see the connection you're making, because crowdfunding already had the opportunity not just to give you equity in the project or in the company that owns the project if you're doing equity crowdfunding, but it also gave you some sort of perks and access and all sorts of other marketing components that you as a person who's invested in the project early would get. So you're saying that with, you know, professionally produced content here, with Stoner Cats, with top tier Hollywood talent, that they're actually going to go out and not just be able to pre-sell it to, foreign territories, but they're actually going to be able to pre-sell it to consumers through different NFT mechanisms.
Yeah, I think this has the potential to change the whole way that content is created. I think with the pandemic, we've seen a lot of failures in the traditional theatrical release process. And I think that the coolness factor of being able to show something off in your house or in your virtual space may eclipse the coolness factor of going to the movie and buying stale popcorn. I'm just sort of thinking aloud here.
And connecting the dots in the way that this is funded and how much engagement do consumers have with the actual product. Um, so this is really interesting. Do you think there is a sort of type of pre-sale of NFTs that really makes sense for film and television and animated product in this case, versus some other forms? Like, what kind of things should be pre-sold, if any?
I just think it's going to be about, the sexiness factor. And, a lot of, if you can imagine with an NFT, it's another way that you could wind up in the credits of the film and you could get some of those perks that have been previously used in the crowdfunding space. But I think that the more entertainment companies can get their audience engaged earlier in the process, the less risky the content development is. If they know they've got X buy-in, then that's a less risky proposition than just raising some money and hoping.
And also there's an interesting two-way relationship going on here, because you can keep a much closer relationship with your token holders or your NFT holders that you traditionally can with your investors. So it's a both ways relationship that will allow the content producers to take the temperature or read what's going on and what does the holders want to see.
Well, and I think that you're going to be extending it also. You can extend it also to selling other rights within those films or within that content, and really tokenize many other components that right now you may not have access to, or consumers may not have access to. So I think that it opens up different channels. Same thing that what we're trying to do on the real estate side. I think that when you're starting to be able to tokenize components and open up new markets, you're creating new business opportunities for many other people that right now are locked out of it. So,
Michael, are you talking about licensing or are you talking about something else?
no, I'm talking about you could be doing something. You could be doing some, I guess, some rights on the product placements, or you could put some NFT products inside the movie and allow the consumers to purchase them or to have a different type of community. I think that you can really look at the content that's going out as professional content and then really divide each component of it and create your own NFT around it.
It's so interesting that you're talking about that, Michael, because certainly there are so many things that are not used in interacting with fan media, because for all these platforms we launched over the last 2 decades, major studios and content owners would not want to distribute components of their content in any way, shape, or form. And Fox used to take fan sites down, and used to be Foxed at the beginning of this. Today, if you look at this series, what's really interesting to me are the numbers. They sold basically access to their pre-access to the series, or the only access at the moment, with tokens that are 0.35 ETH, which is about $800 per viewer. If you look at Amazon and Netflix that are charging you about $15 or euros here, here or there, it's in that range. And the fact that people don't want to spend more than on 3 OTT providers, which is about $40 a person at this point. Someone spent $800 to access one series through this mechanism. It's like a multiple of what we're able to charge on the OTT side. This is what's really astounding, I think.
Well, but I think that you have to look at the how that division of the dollars come back. It's like if you look at Amazon and everything else, how many intermediaries are sitting in the middle and they're picking up their value. So the value to Amazon is like you have the eyeballs and you can deliver those. With the NFTs, now you really are bridging the gap directly from the content creators directly to the consumer. Again, similar to the real estate. It's like if you're opening up that type of market to new consumers to be able to pick up those rights that have been locked or have been controlled by a centralized organization. I think that's really what starts creating change.
And you have to keep in mind that these NFTs also double as collectibles. When you are speaking about what you pay for viewing in Amazon or other media, you are just being a consumer. But with these NFTs, you are viewing something, but you keep the title of something that can become a collectible. So there's also the expectation of increasing the value.
Well, yeah, because I
Yeah.
think that you're creating that secondary market is like that you're able to trade those components at a later date or things like, or provides that. And I think that apart from the hype that's going on there, but if the reality is like you're able to disrupt those type of markets, then you really are creating great value. And to your point, if you're a content creator and you're able to get $800 per consumer versus $2, that has changed the paradigm.
Changes the business model
Yeah.
fundamentally. I think what Leah is and what you, Michael, are saying is that not only that you spend that $800, you get your collectible and you get access to the show, but now some of these collectibles have sold on OpenSea, according to the article, for 30 ETH, which is $68,700 at that time. I don't know what ETH is today. And the creators are getting 2.5% royalty. So this is a really interesting, I would say, business model that keeps on giving.
Yeah, and I think that it allows the creators to also develop new models that are not under the control of the centralized organization. And if they have stronger communities that they're able to achieve that, then I think that it gives them flexibility that otherwise they never had. And I think that if you look at some of the projects that are going on, if they're able to be successful and come out to market, it's like all of a sudden, it's like, I think that I totally agree with it. I think that you're going to see many more people adopt those components, and that will change
If I
that
what
business. I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I was going to say one of the things that we're doing specifically with our Quest tokens is we're working with organizations like Habitat for Humanity and other front public-facing organizations, and we're offering them other funding sources that they've never seen before. For example, Habitat for Humanity can now, with Quest tokens, can actually offer the home, offer donations on the specific home for people. So when you talk about collectability of tokens, people can literally be buying homes for people in Habitat for Humanity, buying the equity and holding on to the token, and exercising charitable contributions while simultaneously owning an NFT that has a value attached to a piece of real property. So, it's changing the entire world when somebody can, for the price of $1, be helping out somebody own a home and still have something of value. As well, we're talking to real estate gurus who actually buy and sell real estate publicly, in the open market. They're going to be able to say, look, you can buy and invest with me, alongside with me in this property. I put it into the Quest platform. And now, because I'm in the Quest platform, if you buy $1 in this property and we make a 20% return, you're going to get $1.20 back. That has never been able to happen in the history of the world. Have a system where you can allow micro funding down to the dollar level and allow everyone to participate in the democratization of the profit.
And bringing that back to the shows, these gurus are doing this and they're advertising these NFTs inside their shows. And so I think I just wanted to bring it back to full. We're actually
We
in
can't
our
hear you,
process.
Chris. Christian, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize. My connection is very poor today. I
Much better.
apologize. Okay, so what we were saying, I think what Michael was alluding to is the fact that we're also using these gurus who are on TVs, for example, the fix and flip shows. They're selling our tokens on these shows. And so that goes back exactly full circle to what we were talking about, where you can see the media is incorporating NFTs. That's what we're doing as well. We're incorporating them in, it looks like the exact same fashion.
One other thing I wanted to mention, Mariana, that I particularly like about the Quest token is that it is very specifically not a security, right? So that, at least because the US market continues to be a large market and it's always a problem of whether or not you're selling securities, these tokens as a proxy of something that has been explicitly ruled out as a security makes it possible as an on-ramp into crypto, right, without having to fight with the SEC as well.
Yeah, I love the utility that surrounds Quest. It's wonderful.
And incidentally, there's I've talked a lot about how the problem with NFTs is that they're not in any way bound to actual rights, because where assets that are not on the blockchain are concerned, you're down to law. And so you have to have a legal mechanism, and Quest has that legal mechanism, right? They're doing it for real estate right now, but within other realms, there are instruments, for example, that banks use where they will, there are vaults that banks run, and you can put assets in those vaults and generate what I think is called an SDK, or I can't remember now exactly the term, but they will in essence issue you a certificate of beneficial ownership, right? And then you can trade those things. And so paintings, art, like high-end art, and vehicles, like expensive vehicles, and gold and all other kinds of things, then also fall within the reach of the Quest mechanism, right? Because it's really all about tying up the rights on the legal side.
Absolutely. Ed, you had a question?
I do. I have a question about Quest. How is it not a security? And I assume it's a fractional ownership of a property, but isn't there a corporation running that property, and doesn't this property have to be properly managed, including, sale or whatever that would result in upside?
I can answer that. So the reason Eric is referring to it specifically not a security is because what the Quest token attaches to is the equity of the property. Real estate agents, real estate brokers, title companies all have been exchanging, moving around, and selling and brokering equity for as long as this country's had real estate. And it has never been, and it has always been ruled out as under the purview of the SEC. Second of all, we don't actually manage the properties. We only make it so that the equity cannot exchange hands without us receiving it and distributing it.
And they're
Did
working
that
in
answer your
different.
question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for that. It's fascinating, because I'm looking at a perhaps a similar model, but having to do with intellectual property, like media ownership.
Yeah.
And
Tell them your background.
well, I have a company that both creates immersive media venues and programming, called Vortex Immersion Media, and we create 360 dome theaters and event spaces. And so I'm looking at maybe, something similar to a DAO as a structure that could rapidly build out these venues locally, and then, also generate funding for the shows or like that. So I'm just scratching my head over this whole space. It's very interesting. I noticed that the DAO is now approved in one state as a legal structure. But yeah,
That would be Wyoming.
exactly. So
Yeah.
But
I'm very curious about the space, but yeah,
Ed needs he has like a hybrid. So I've been working with him for a long time. I was on his board of directors. Ed has a hybrid company. So on one hand, he has to fund not necessarily as much of a real estate development, but you could think of it as a real estate company, launching these domes around the globe where the productions occur. And on the other side, he's a media company. So I think you could use the Quest platform for the first component of the business.
And to be clear, we do have components in Quest that would be considered a security. We just haven't launched them because of the position where the SEC has taken, that they want to be, very deeply invested in anything that's a security. So yeah, we want to we're sticking with the equity for right now because it's clearly not a security.
I
got it.
wanted to ask too, like in the win-win situation that you're talking about with Habitat for Humanity, are we talking about also the ability to follow the people that you donate to, so that you can kind of get that spirit of giving, that warm fuzzy, over and over again?
Yeah, actually, it is that because so if I fund, let's say, Joe and Martha's house, and let's say I bought $10 in equity so that they could live there, because of the way the Quest token works, there's a serialization of those tokens that attach to that house as long as I have those tokens. So I can continue to look in on their house through our database and see the house and see how it's performing and see pictures of it and see updated appraisals. All of those things allow me to participate at that granular level for as long as I choose.
But I'm wondering about the ability to sort of personalize the warm fuzzy. I guess what I'm saying is, if in situations where you donate, it would be great to see 5 years later, like how the donations have made a difference. And I wonder if these kinds of tools would allow us to do that, or if that's really just a social media kind of thing.
But you could
Yeah,
I
with
they absolutely
tokens,
would
right?
allow that.
You can do it
yeah,
with
Yeah, they
tokens, right?
yeah, you could do
yeah,
it
they
with
absolutely would
tokens.
that.
And also, you would want to let Habitat for Humanity, or my proposal with them, includes exactly that because they're going to want to use and follow the changing of lives and the fact that people are now living in a home. That a short segue from that. When you use Quest as a way of financing the property,
the actual monthly obligation that you owe, like instead of a mortgage payment, is about 60% less of what a mortgage would be. So we're talking mass affordability for people who could never have afforded the house before. So yeah, Habitat for Humanity is going to be very deeply incentivized to continually show how their home ownership has become easier and more accessible to their people.
David, you have one quick question, and then you need to like mute it.
Well, it's for both Quest and Chris, I guess. It's a two-pronged question very quickly. What were the circumstances that caused Belize to want to entertain your proposal, and to what Quest just was speaking about, what happens to a property if it is 100% or more wrapped up with these NFT donations, whatever you want to call it? It's not quite equity, but like we saw in the mortgage meltdown marketplace, what would happen to that house of Joan and Michael's or whatever you used as an example, if indeed it is oversold, and what happens when there's a transition with that property with those people that donated?
So you've got two questions here. I can take one of them, and then Mike Waters will take another one. Mike Waters will take your follow-up question on what happens to the property. You asked, how did we get involved with the country of Belize, essentially. We had been initially researching medical tourism and a way to finance people getting their surgeries taken care of. And we were looking at that from a down-to-earth perspective, because here in the US, the cost of medical is phenomenal. But if you go offshore, then the cost drops drastically. But that still doesn't solve all of the problems that people may have. They still have to come up with money. And a lot of these people that need medical have assets, but they have no way of getting the money out of the assets to be able to utilize the funding that's tied up in them. So someone could have a house, and that house could be worth $1 million, but they don't have that $1 million. Even if it's all if it's all paid for, they still don't have that access. We devised a way to access those funds in real property, real time, so that they could use those funds. Okay, so how did that bring us to Belize? So we were looking at medical tourism, and Belize was actually a very good option for medical tourism because it's English speaking, it has a fantastic legal system, and they need the influx as well. They rely heavily on tourism, and so we were developing a business plan for medical tourism when we segued from that and said, okay, we need to actually develop a plan that people can use the equity in their homes to get the medical tourism that they need. And then that helped us to develop the Quest Crypto. Now, Quest Crypto has been in development for nearly 3 to 4 years. It is entirely self-funded. We have no debt. We have no debt obligations in the company. That's important. When we approach the country of Belize with a twofold proposition, we said we can apply Quest Crypto to your lands, and we can also use Quest Crypto on property that we want to purchase for medical tourism, and have the people come to Belize and pay for their services in our token, in the Quest coin. So what made Belize want this? Well, I don't know any country outside of the US that would want to improve their circumstances financially. And so that's essentially how the dialogue began with Belize. Okay. Did that answer your first question?
Yeah,
Ed?
it's perfect.
Okay.
I think you guys had such a long road to solving this, but you came upon something that's really a brilliant solution for everyone.
Yeah, and it looks like
we are out of time. We usually try to keep these within an hour, so we have more questions from the audience too. I appreciate everyone's participation. I appreciate for our speakers to be here for 2 hours today. We really greatly appreciate your contribution to the discussion. And we'll see everyone next week, 1:30 here at the Clubhouse. Thank you so much for showing up and for joining us and for sharing your knowledge.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Mariana.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
Bye.
you.
Thank you.